Good evening, I'm Robbie Alampay. The big stories tonight. Despite concerns over the speed by which Sputnik 5 was developed, the country is raring to take part in the Phase 3 clinical trials for Russia's supposed vaccine. The widespread testing will happen in October. 6 months into quarantine measures across the country, the Task Force Against COVID-19 is once again recalibrating its strategy to focus on curbing local transmissions. IATF officials have been tapped to support LGUs. PhilHealth is hitting the pause button on its interim reimbursement mechanism, or IRM. Senators also want to grill Health Secretary Francisco Duque regarding the anomalies in the state insurer. The president is set to announce new quarantine classifications on Monday next week, and should restrictions be eased in the metro, transport officials claim they are ready to ferry passengers once again. And while most of us may be content with a decent surgical mask for protection, a deep-pocketed businessman wants something more flashy, a mask adorned with more than 3,000 diamonds worth $1.5 million. Let's begin with the country committing to take part in the widespread trial for Russia's first registered COVID-19 vaccine. Malacanang says it's likely to make it to the local market later than expected. However, Maricel Halili walks us through the projected timeline in this report.
President Duterte has offered to be the first to try Sputnik 5, the anti-COVID vaccine being developed by Gamaleya Research Institute of Russia. But the shots may arrive in the country later than expected. According to Palace spokesman Harry Roque, the earliest would have to be on May 1st, as the vaccine expert panel has yet to review the results of the first 2 phases of the clinical trials by next month. The Phase 3 clinical trial, which will be conducted simultaneously in the Philippines and Russia, will be between October this year to March 2021. It means the vaccine candidate won't get the nod of the Food and Drug Administration until April next year. In his latest public address, President Duterte expressed hope that Filipinos will have a COVID-free Christmas courtesy of Moscow's vaccine. But the palace won't budge, saying there are still other vaccine candidates.
Ito naman pong Gamaleya vaccine is only one. No? Marami na pong mga vaccine na nasa third phase na of clinical trials. No? So baka meron naman pong mauna pa.
Several groups are skeptical about the safety of what Russia calls the first registered vaccine. They say the Philippines should not rush to acquire shots as they are still undergoing trials. The Health Department assured that the vaccine will undergo serious scrutiny before making it to the local market. FDA Director General Eric Domingo also said that the shots will have to undertake layers of validation, including an endorsement from the Department of Science and Technology before getting the FDA's nod.
So they need approval from FDA. So kailangan ma-check namin yung technical dossier, and then of course the ethics approval, and then they have to report to us what's happening during the trial.
But Russia is not alone. Domingo said other manufacturers have expressed interest to conduct clinical trials in the country. He said it's possible for several clinical trials to be conducted in the country, especially with the start of the World Health Organization Solidarity Trial expected either this month or next. For News 5, Maricel Halili, we are One News.
Several health experts are raising their eyebrows at Sputnik 5, but Russia is unfazed. Moscow's Health Minister Mikhail Murashko branded as groundless safety concerns aired by health experts worldwide. COVID-19 vaccine has yet to complete its final trials and has been highly criticized due to its rushed approval.
Коллеги зарубежные, которые, видимо, чувствуя определенную конкуренцию, конкурентные преимущества российского препарата, пытаются, так скажем, высказывать какие-то мнения, которые, на наш взгляд, абсолютно безосновательны. Действительно, многие страны применяли те или иные форсированные режимы для исследований. Но для российской вакцины, еще раз говорю, что это решение, которое уже имело определенные клинические знания и данные.
Releasing a proven vaccine could take up to 2 years. That's according to National Task Force Against COVID-19 Special Advisor Dr. Ted Herbosa. Speaking with One News The Chiefs, Herbosa explained that vaccines go through 4 phases before it can be used. But Herbosa says the country is also in talks with 4 other countries that have likewise made progress in their search for a cure.
Tayo naman, wala naman tayong pinipili eh. But all in all, meron naman tayong process for that. We have the government scientists who will do the necessary vetting of any vaccine na ipaparegister sa ating FDA.
The Food and Drug Administration has meanwhile greenlit a traditional Chinese medicine, that's Lianhua Qingwen, but the FDA says it is not a treatment for COVID-19. The Chinese embassy says the capsule is an approved COVID-19 treatment for mild and moderate cases, but that is not the case here, says FDA Director General Eric Domingo.
Sa Pilipinas, ang traditional medicine, we do not approve indications for particular illness. Usually, mga symptom complexes or mga organ-specific na mga di ba, na mga karamdaman. Yun yung traditional medicine.
The IATF says it has shifted its focus to the prevention of local transmission of COVID-19. In line with this, members of the task force have been assigned to support specific LGUs. Greg Gregorio gives us the lowdown on the new strategy.
Members of the IATF went to Cavite to check on the province's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Cavite currently ranks second in Calabarzon region with the most number of infections. As of August 12, Cavite has more than 5,000 confirmed cases, around 3,700 of which are active. The government's tracing czar Benjamin Magalong said the province's contact tracing efforts are inefficient. Magalong explained Cavite's ratio is 1 positive case to 4 or 5 traced individuals. That means the LGU is clearly behind the benchmark of 1:37 for urban areas and 1:30 in rural places. Based on Cavite's daily average of 64 cases, the province might be missing out around 1,600 individuals who have had an encounter with COVID-19 positive patients. Magalong appeals to LGUs to ramp up their contact tracing efforts.
With this figure, it's pathetic. Kaawa-awa po yung figure na yan. I don't think we will be able to solve this COVID-19 situation natin ho ngayon. The worst is yet to come, believe me.
In response, Cavite Governor John Vic Remulla explained that they learned the standard figures just now. Remulla also cited some challenges.
Contact tracers will work in Cavite, but half the contacts are in Manila. So, that's how those are the limitations.
The governor has vowed to step up their game. Remulla said he will meet with local executives to improve their strategy, including the hiring of around 2,000 additional contact tracers. The IATF, for its part, donated 20,000 test kits to the province. Chief Implementer Carlito Galvez Jr. said the task force is recalibrating its strategies as the IATF focuses on preventing local transmissions.
Nakita natin sa Cebu, 1,900 ang naka-home isolation. So pero nung ginawa natin na nagkaroon tayo ng strict implementation ng isolation, nakita natin nag-improve ang Cebu.
Aligned with this, members of the IATF have been assigned to support specific local government units. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, we are One News.
The Department of Health is reporting more than 4,000 new COVID-19 infections in the country. That would bring the total number of cases to more than 147,000, some 74,000 of which are considered active. The virus killed 23 people over the past 24 hours. That pushes the national death toll to around 2,400. More than 70,000, meanwhile, have gotten better from the disease, with over 1,400 new recoveries over the past 24 hours. We'll pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, PhilHealth has suspended its cash advance reimbursement scheme as lawmakers seek a review in its implementation. But the agency is firm it did not exercise favoritism in the disbursement of funds to hospitals. And the looming resumption of classes is still a go as far as the Education Department is concerned. But lawmakers insist the DepEd still has a lot of ironing out to do, the details after the break. I'm Robbie Alampay. You're watching The Big Story. Heeding the calls of some senators, PhilHealth has suspended its controversial Interim Reimbursement Mechanism, or IRM. Lawmakers from both chambers raised several issues against the cash advance system. The National Bureau of Investigation, for its part, will conduct its own probe into the agency's supposed anomalies. Task Force PhilHealth will closely work with the Justice Department as they audit the state insurer and conduct lifestyle checks on its officials and employees. Still on PhilHealth, Senator Panfilo Lacson is hell-bent on quizzing Health Secretary Francisco Duque once the Senate probe resumes next week. Lacson says he will ask Duque about his recommendations to the President regarding the controversy. Meanwhile, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian says Duque should be speaking up by now.
Siya ang chairman ng PhilHealth And being a board member, dapat magsalita siya. At yung board, meron silang kapangyarihan na magbantay.
Meanwhile, an official insists it is not favoritism that granted a Davao-based hospital the lion's share of PhilHealth IRM funds. PhilHealth Region 11 Acting Vice President Hector Malate said it's natural for the Southern Philippines Medical Center to need huge sums. He said it's one of the only 2 COVID centers in Mindanao, and it is the biggest COVID referral hospital in the region. And Marikina 2nd District Representative Stella Kimbo says the extent of PhilHealth's excess pneumonia payments is pegged at more than 15 billion pesos from 2014 to 2018. She adds that in 2018 alone, PhilHealth claims for pneumonia exceeded the estimated number of pneumonia patients based on the Health Department's morbidity data. President Duterte is expected to announce new quarantine classifications on August 17. The current MECQ status in Metro Manila, Bulacan, Rizal, Cavite, and Laguna are set to lapse on August 18. But classifications in other regions are only applicable until Saturday, August 15. Palace spokesperson Harry Roque says the IATF already has recommendations for provinces outside MECQ areas. As those new classifications have yet to be announced next week, stranded individuals have no choice but to wait in Manila's ports in hopes that they would be able to make their way home soon. Romel Lopez with a full story.
A number of locally stranded individuals are crammed inside the container van, which has become their makeshift shelter. Some sleeps in hammock connected to metal barriers from the Ports Authority. Maria Fe was bound for Iloilo last week, but as Metro Manila reverts to MECQ, sea travel was once again suspended.
Hindi kami komportable kasi siksikan po kami dito. Mainit kung tanghali.
Juanito, who plans to go home to Surigao, expresses worry as they might get infected with COVID-19 due to their cramped-up situation.
Hindi na namin nasusunod talaga yung distancing na Malay mo baka ang isa dito meron, Tapos madala namin sa mga pamilya-pamilya.
Some private organizations, Ports Authority, and port operators give out food packs twice a day. The Philippine Ports Authority admits that without assistance from the other groups, it will be hard for them to attend to the stranded locals. In total, there are 272 LSIs in the area, mostly from Region 6, which imposed a moratorium on accepting returning residents. However, port official warns that it is not a guarantee that they will be allowed to go back to their provinces as soon as the MECQ gets lifted.
Iko-coordinate uli doon sa kanilang destination, yung mga LGU, kung tatanggapin ba sila. Dahil nga katulad ng Bacolod at saka Iloilo, na mayroon uli silang inisyo na moratorium na naging effective noong August 7. So magbilang po tayo, 14 plus 7, sa August 23 pa sila makakaalis.
For News 5, Romel Lopez, we are One News.
And these are the other big stories today. Nearly 5,000 online sellers have so far registered with the Bureau of Internal Revenue. This was after the BIR required online sellers to register or risk getting penalized. E-commerce players have 3 weeks left to meet the BIR's deadline. Shell is permanently shutting down its refinery in Batangas amid continually low refining margins due to the pandemic. The pump operator is turning the facility into an importation hub. Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi says the move will not affect the country's oil supply. After all, Shell will continue to fill in its share by importing already refined products. And Tropical Depression Hener has weakened into a low-pressure area, remaining less likely to have a significant impact on the country. Pag-asa notes, however, that the ITCZ will bring scattered rain showers and thunderstorms over several areas in Visayas and Mindanao. The retrenchment of about 100 LRT-1 personnel has been temporarily put on hold. This as the LRMC tries to recalibrate its cost-cutting strategies. Gerard de la Peña has the rest of the story.
Eric resorted to selling longganisa from his hometown in Kalumpit, Bulacan when the government imposed strict quarantine rules in March. He was forced to go on leave from his job as a teller at the LRT Line 1 in June. And as LRT Line 1 is still not operational, he is among the LRMC employees that are about to be laid off. 20% of the workforce will be let go due to the 90% drop in passenger count.
Masakit dahil sa dinadaanan natin ngayong pandemic. Napakasakit kasi bilang padre de pamilya, may umaasa rin sa aking mga bata.
The retrenchment is supposed to take effect on September 15, but the company has notified employees that it will put on hold its retrenchment process for now as it tries to recalibrate its strategies. For a transportation official, though, mass retrenchment makes sense in light of government orders to implement cashless transactions, which would render most tellers redundant.
The department has instructed all the railway operators to digitalize. Ito lang yung excess staff nila.
But the government said it is ready to absorb those who will lose their jobs at LRMC, as there are vacancies at the LRT Line 2 and MRT 3. The government is also beefing up its manpower for the Rail Institute, as well as the forthcoming operations of the North and South lines of the Philippine National Railways or PNR.
Because we are in the stage of capacity build-up, lalo na for NSCR, we need those people, lalo na yung the technical people, kung natanggalin nila.
The LRTA, which operates the LRT Line 2, will assess first if it can absorb the retrenched employees. Officials say they have their own losses to worry about.
Kami din, hirap din. May financial situation din kami. Sabi ko nga, even before nitong pandemic na talagang losing na kami.
The DOTR is also in talks with LRMC for financial support, as the company booked losses of as much as 125 million pesos due to strict quarantine protocols.
For News 5, Gerard de la Peña, we are One News.
Coming up on the big story, transport shareholders are rolling up their sleeves for the lifting of MECQ in Metro Manila and nearby provinces. But some PUV drivers are thinking twice about getting back on the road as passengers remain limited. And anyone willing to shell out millions of dollars for a face mask will find out the deal behind the world's most expensive COVID-19 mask after this short break. This is the big story. I'm Robbie Alampay. Lawmakers met with transport officials today to discuss the sector's plans once the MECQ is lifted. What to expect next week? In this report by Ria Fernandez.
Transport authorities said they are ready to resume operations once the quarantine status in Metro Manila is downgraded on August 19. The DOTR and the LTFRB said more jeepneys will be allowed to ply the streets as more routes will reopen for public transport vehicles.
Yung dating rota po pre-COVID, hindi naman ibig sabihin na papayagan na.
The government will also allow more buses and UV Express units to ferry passengers. Lawmakers urge transport officials to be systematic in setting up concrete barriers along EDSA to prevent congestion and accidents.
Unahin nila yung sa mga underpass, considering na yung concrete barrier kasi ay kain ng malaking space, ng bottleneck para sa mga private cars.
Lagyan din natin ng ilaw kasi minsan yung iba madilim. Maganda nga ang barrier natin, pero kung madilim naman po, baka maging ng aksidente.
MMDA General Manager Jojo Garcia welcomed these recommendations and committed to finish the installation within the year. But for more options for commuters, House Transportation Committee Chairman Edgar Sarmiento said motorcycle taxis should already be allowed to operate.
Anyway, may safety net naman na nilalagay, yung tinatawag na barrier.
Transport stakeholders are aware, however, that not all public drivers will mount trips once allowed by the government as the number of passengers remain limited. But Robert C. of the Transport Coalition Move as One said the government's plan to do service contracting could address the drivers' woes. Under the scheme, drivers will be paid by the state on a per-kilometer basis, so they don't have to rely on payments collected from passengers. Still, C admitted that this could put more strain on the already reduced 10 billion peso budget of the DOTR under the proposed Bayanihan 2 bill. The agency's original spending plan was at 21 billion pesos. The House Transportation Committee also approved bills on taxi passenger rights, wherein the PNP Highway Patrol Group proposed to require police clearances from taxi drivers. For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
The Department of Education will not budge. They say classes will start on August 24. This despite House lawmakers still raising a number of still unresolved issues. Camille Samonte tells us what these are.
Despite appeals from various sectors, the Department of Education is bent on starting the school year on August 24. To make additional preparations, Education Undersecretary Tonicito Umali said activities in the first 2 weeks of classes will be adjusted.
For all schools affected or who are placed under MECQ, para po hindi makompromiso po yung ipinapangamba po natin na magulang pupunta sa paaralan, o kaya may darating o kung paano po dadalhin yung mga self-learning modules.
But in a House hearing Thursday, lawmakers pointed out unsolved issues from network connection, especially in far-flung areas, to reports of teachers soliciting money for the printing and distribution of modules to meet the deadline. House Education Committee Chairman Romal Romulo asked the DepEd to lessen its printing requirements.
Baka it's time to be a little bit more realistic. Meaning, wag na yung buong 5,000 kasi kung hindi, talagang napakarami papel ang kailangan. Wag na natin pilitin lahat para yung paper requirements at yung hindi na ganun kalaki. Hindi rin natin kayang sagutin lahat, ang gobyerno, no?
Some teachers also worry about distributing modules as some schools are used as quarantine facilities. Lawmakers also questioned as to how exactly students will be graded, especially those who are dependent on DepEd's TV and radio module.
Will they be graded also? Will they be considered as enrolled and will they be graded also for this school year and for this type of learning?
Ay yung printed material na i-deliver po sa kanila at i-retrieve isang beses or isang beses po kada linggo o isang beses sa bawat 2 linggo po. Yun po yung pagbabasihan po natin.
Meanwhile, telco giants Globe and Smart said they are already fixing their cellular infrastructure to reach far-flung communities and provide them better connectivity.
We're coming up with specific packages for teachers and learners, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, we will be very much
willing to provide the necessary connectivity for our schools.
The DepEd also said that the errors in its TV class was due to typing errors. The agency vows that it will never happen again. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
Vice President Lenny Robredo has written to Education Secretary Leonor Briones to amplify concerns of teachers, parents, and students about the upcoming resumption of classes. In her letter, Robredo gave several recommendations on how to make blended learning more accessible, such as investments in internet hubs in schools and communities. Robredo pointed out that according to the latest data, 14 million households do not have access to the internet. As for offline modalities, the Vice President urged DepEd to expedite the distribution of printed modules. Justice Secretary Minardo Guevara has confirmed that a German national summoned by the NBI for its Wirecard probe has died. Guevara says Christopher Bauer died last July 27 in a Parañaque hospital due to natural causes. The NBI was investigating Bauer for possible links to the missing funds, as he is believed to be a former executive of Wirecard. The Justice Secretary added that Bauer appeared to be a Philippine citizen married to a Filipino. He was also believed to be in the tour operations business. Meanwhile, the NBI has recommended filing charges against 2 immigration officers for falsifying travel records of a former Wirecard executive. The NBI identified immigration officers Perry Pancho and Marcos Nicodemus for tampering travel documents of former Wirecard COO Jan Marsalek, who had travel records in Manila last June. The NBI added that the spurious immigration records of Marsalek's travel to the country appear to have been meant to mislead European authorities. And let's take a quick look at some of the world's big stories. Senator Kamala Harris made her first appearance as the running mate of Democratic presidential candidate and former U.S. Vice President Joe Biden. In the Delaware campaign, Harris strongly rebuked Trump's leadership while touting Biden's continuous significance in U.S. history. Harris said Biden has clearly taken his place in history, being the only person who served alongside the first black president and then choosing the first black woman on a major party ticket to be his running mate. Brazil's Parana state is set to produce the COVID-19 vaccine approved by Russia after the two parties signed a memorandum of understanding. Parana's Technology Institute says they are now waiting for Moscow to send the results of its phase 1 and 2 trials. The Brazilian state will likely participate in the third phase of the test. 3 people were reported dead while others injured after a train derailed in eastern Scotland. One of the 3 pronounced dead include the train driver. Authorities say the surrounding area had been hit by floods in recent days, and some reports suggest a landslide may have played a part in the derailment. And wondering how the world's most expensive face mask would look, Israeli jewelers are pouring months of effort into this COVID-19 mask priced at $1.5 million. That amounts to a whopping 73.2 million pesos. The mask is made of 18-karat gold and studded with some 3,600 black and white diamonds. But the bigger question is, would the unnamed US-based client wear it to the supermarket? And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime, anywhere. I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News. Good evening.